Welcome to another segment of the Gospel Truth Preacher. This is the fourth teaching about inward holiness. In Matthew 15:17 through 20, Jesus says, "Do you not see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth comes from the heart, and those things defile a person. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These things are what defiles a person. But eating with unwashed hands does not defile a person." In the last segment, I said to commit a sin does not defile the heart. What defiles the heart is the intention to commit sin. God knows that humanity is not perfect. Therefore, God does not hold humanity's imperfections against us. Sooner or later, a person will commit an act of sin or acts of sin. The sinful deed that is committed does not defile the heart. What defiles the heart is the deliberate intent to commit a sinful act. In order to be a murderer, an adulterer, to live in sexual immorality, to be a thief, to give false testimony, to be a slanderer, the intent to commit such an action, coupled with the refusal of not committing such an action, must be in place. What defiles a person is a deliberate intent to commit a sinful act. Jesus addresses this issue in Matthew, beginning in chapter 5, verse 16. "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Jesus is saying that every believer should be intentional about following God's commandments and God's personal divine directives to you, which is whatever God has told you to do. In Matthew 5:48, Jesus tells believers to be perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. The Greek word that is translated as perfect in the King James Version of the Bible is teleos. T-E-L-E-I-O-S. Teleos does not mean perfect, as in without fault, blemish, or sin. Teleos means to bring to a final end by which nothing else is beyond that point. What Jesus is saying is, God is at rest from all he has created and commanded. God is not up in heaven, tweaking his word to make it fit into our modern day definition of life. Therefore, every believer should be teleos in his or her commitment to God's commandments and personal divine directive, which is whatever God has told you to do. Believers are called to be teleos, or intentional about not walking before God with a defiled heart. Believers are not to adopt a lifestyle that is in clear conflict with the Word of God and then use the love of God motif as affirmation for living in an intentional sinful lifestyle. When Satan drops opportunities of sin into a believer's life, the believer must become intentional about not dwelling on that sin, picking up that sin, and allowing that sin to become an intentional, motivating, decision-making factor in that believer's life. In conclusion, Jesus has called every believer to walk in inward holiness. Believers walk in inward holiness by becoming teleos, or intentional about not allowing evil intent to dominate our decision-making processes. Until next time, I am the Gospel Truth Preacher.